Chapter 45-88. He just slowly put down the book in his hands, his face expressionless. Actually, as a man, he could understand why Qin Mo was doing this. To Qin Mo, Enchanting was more of a guardian of King Entertainment or the Qin family's other businesses, or Qin Yi Huan's. This was more meaningful than him being Yi Huan's husband. Qin Mo's arrangement was well-intentioned. It might not be very fair, but it was completely fair and cruel. If either he or Yi Xiangnan couldn't accept it and gave up, they would lose. Not to the other party, but to themselves. Enchanting's gaze landed on the book, and he sighed softly. In the end, he picked up the book and focused on reading. But he knew in his heart that he was missing a certain person. She must be very happy now, with Yi Xiangnan by her side. Enchanting could almost foresee how hard it would be for him in the future, and how he would lose to Yi Huan's love. But he had never thought of turning back. From the moment he saw her photo, he had never turned back. His pride wouldn't allow him to turn back. In the master bedroom, Yi Huan and Qin Mo were still arguing. Yi Huan's health wasn't good, but she was especially excited at this moment, as if she was on steroids. Qin Mo was helpless. He reached out to pull her to his side, but Yi Huan avoided him. She looked at him with a domineering attitude. Qin Mo, I don't care what you think, but Enchanting is at home. You know he likes Yi Huan, so he gave 500 drops of blood to Yi Huan. How can you be so cruel? Qin Mo's gaze landed on her face. After a long time, he said irritably, this has never been important, and Enchanting doesn't care about this. If a sensible boy is restricted by what he has to give, then this kind of relationship is too petty. Yi Huan, you don't understand men well enough, and you don't understand Enchanting well enough. Yi Huan was a little angry in an instant. I don't understand you well enough, do I? Qin Mo didn't say anything and just stared at her quietly. Yi Huan and Yi Huan were still facing each other. After a long time, Qin Mo said in a much calmer tone, why would you think that? He wanted to touch her again, but Yi Huan still backed away. After a while, she said in a low voice, Qin Mo, I really don't understand you. As she said that, she lowered her gaze. You've always been able to do whatever you want. It's the same for me and it's the same for Yi Huan. Yi Huan is only a child. Qin Mo's gaze became a little deep. After a long while, he said lightly, it is precisely because she is a child that we follow her heart. Yi Huan, I know you like Enchanting very much, but don't forget that Yi Huan is our child. No matter what happens in the future, I hope that she can marry love. So when the Yi family proposed to let Yi Huan go, he didn't hesitate, because Yi Huan wanted to be with Yi Xiangnan. Qin Mo just hoped that Yi Huan could choose someone she liked while she was with the two children. If she chose Yi Xiangnan, then the career would be Enchanting's compensation. If Yi Huan chose Enchanting, the Qin family's career would become Enchanting's responsibility. This kind of thinking seemed contradictory, but it couldn't be more reasonable. Yi Huan had nothing to say after he said this, but she was still angry. After a long time, she said stiffly, I'll go see Enchanting. Chapter 45-89. After a long while, she said stiffly, I'm going to see Enchanting. A big hand pressed on her shoulder. It was Qin Mo. He said, I'll go. I have something to talk to him about. Yi Huan looked at him suspiciously. Qin Mo smiled. What? You don't believe me? Yi Huan stopped talking. At that moment, she also felt physically and mentally exhausted. She leaned back on the sofa. She didn't say anything and just looked at Qin Mo. Qin Mo saw her angry look and found it funny. He couldn't help but reach out to tease her. Yi Huan is so young. Look at you. You get so angry because of such a small thing. What will you do in the future? Huan completely ignored him. He continued to tease her, but Huan slapped him away. Qin Mo, aren't you going to see Shinting? Qin Mo smiled. Yes. Before he left, he squatted down and said gently, all right, I'm not angry anymore. Huan turned her head away. Her awkward look made her feel a little emotional. Qin Mo chuckled. All right, I'm going to talk to Shinting first. We'll make up when I come back and have a small meeting. Okay. Huan wanted to say, go to hell, but she held back. Qin Mo smiled and tugged at her hair before he got up. He left in high spirits again. Huan was left alone on the sofa. She clenched her fists and bit her lip. How could she be charmed by his beauty? She was so angry just now, but Qin Mo just smiled at her and she couldn't help herself. Damn it. Even though she was already used to his looks, even though there were plenty of good-looking old cured meats and little fresh meats in the entertainment industry, she seemed to fall for it. While Huan was gritting her teeth, Qin Mo knocked on Shinting's bedroom door. Shinting was reading and was surprised. He immediately stood up. Uncle. Qin Mo walked over and patted him on the shoulder. He said with a smile, all right, sit down. Don't be so restrained. Shinting nodded and sat on the small sofa with Qin Mo. There was a book on his lap, and his fingers were gently stroking it. Qin Mo was a straightforward man who liked to cut to the chase. His gaze fell on Shinting's face, and he smiled slightly. How are you feeling? You've lost a lot of blood, so you should rest for a few more days. Shinting shook his head. I'm fine. Qin Mo didn't continue on this topic. He thought for a moment before saying in a low voice, Shinting, if I were to give you a choice now, it would be to give up on Huan and groom you to be the successor of King Entertainment. His voice was slow and persuasive. Now, you can choose again. This was a huge temptation for a boy. It meant that he wouldn't have to suffer in the future and could have the results he wanted. He was just Shinting, an accessory to Qin Huan. It was a huge temptation, but Shinting still rejected it. He said softly, I want to wait for her to grow up. Qin Mo smiled. All right. I respect your decision. He had only come to ask this question. It had nothing to do with comforting him. He was a boy, so he had to be able to bear it. After Qin Mo left, Shinting wanted to continue reading, but he couldn't bear it anymore. In the end, he took out his phone and opened it. There were photos. They were of Huan. He stared at them for a long time. On the other side, Qin Mo returned to his bedroom. When he opened the door, he saw Huan leaning on the sofa. Chapter 4590. Updated quickly. On the other side, Qin Mo returned to his bedroom. When he opened the door, he saw Huan leaning on the sofa. She looked up and stared at Qin Mo's face. Is he okay? Qin Mo walked over and sat beside her. He reached out and pulled Huan into his arms. She didn't struggle. Qin Mo gently rubbed her hair and smiled gently. The child I picked isn't so fragile. She's not like a little girl who gets angry when things don't go her way. Huan glared at him. I'm not a little girl, and I'm not angry. Qin Mo laughed. You're still denying it. Look at how many times you've argued with me for Shinting. Huan lowered her eyes and didn't speak for a long time. Qin Mo kept looking at her with a gentle gaze. After some time, Huan finally said bitterly, Qin Mo, you're actually far more affectionate and heartless than I thought. I know you're very rational, and you're also much more merciless than I thought. I know you're very rational, and you've made the right choice, but perhaps I'm too emotional. I can't accept that we're actually on different channels. Hee-hwan stared into Chin Mo's eyes as she said, but in my heart, I feel that you're right and wrong. After all, Hee-hwan is still so young. I don't think that time has come. Chin Mo lowered his eyes and smiled faintly. She's still young, but the Chin family's business can't stop. Hee-hwan, you've said so much and calculated so much, but you haven't considered the unexpected. If something happens to me one day, who will the family rely on? All these years, you've been focusing on filming and managing the Chin family's business. Hee-hwan is too young. Hee-hwan didn't allow him to continue. She covered his lips to stop him. However, Chin Mo pushed her away and said in a low voice, Hee-hwan, there are always accidents in life. I'm not doing this for the Chin family. I'm doing this for you and Hee-hwan. I want you to live a decent life, even if I'm not around. After he finished speaking, he stared straight at Hee-hwan. Hee-hwan had already fallen silent. She pursed her lips and did not speak for a long time. Chin Mo's voice was very gentle. Are you angry? Hee-hwan looked down. You're angry. Can't I be angry at you for saying such things? If I were you, how would you feel? Chin Mo held her hand and said in a more gentle voice, I won't be happy, but we have some plans for the future. Hee-hwan bit her lip. I don't want to hear that. Chin Mo's expression was a little gentle, and his voice was low and husky. I'm just saying. It didn't really happen, Hee-hwan. As he spoke, he was probably a little excited himself. His voice was a little low. I won't let that happen. Hee-hwan was not in a good mood. After a long time, she said, Chin Mo, I don't want to hear that. He smiled. That's because you care about me. Hee-hwan, I'm happy. But I'm a man, and a man has to take responsibility. I have to make arrangements for a woman, don't you think so? Hee-hwan shook her head and did not say anything else. She buried her face in Chin Mo's arms and did not say anything else. Chin Mo knew that she was feeling uncomfortable, so he did not say anything. He did not say it in the past because she did not have him in her heart. Later on, when she did have him in her heart, he would not say it. Today, he did not know why, but he said it. After saying it, she was still sad. Chapter 45-91. Hee-hwan didn't make a sound. She just leaned into his arms. Chin Mo smiled faintly. He just hugged her and did nothing else. He just wanted to feel her existence. After a long time, Hee-hwan pushed him. Okay, it's time to sleep. Chin Mo looked at her with a strange gaze. Hee-hwan glared at him. Don't even think about it. It's a sin to think about it. Chin Mo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He reached out and pinched her cheek. Don't be naughty. If you continue to be naughty, I'll hit you, yeah. Hee-hwan looked at him eagerly. Yeah, where is it? Chin Mo's expression became even more thought-provoking. He hit her once before getting up. His slender body walked to the bathroom. Hee-hwan turned her head and lay on the sofa, looking at Chin Mo. She was attracted to him again. After a long time, her face was a little hot. She snorted. It's a sin to think about it. This matter was over. Hee-hwan was living in the Yi family, so it was convenient for her to be taken care of. After all, Hee-hwan's movie, Twin, was about to premiere. Chin Mo had a lot of things to do in his company and Hee-hwan's movie. He couldn't split himself. This was also one of the reasons why he left Hee-hwan in the Yi family. 2:14, the day finally arrived. King Entertainment's Best Actress, Seong-lan, announced that she had been married for 4 years. The other party was a rich businessman. Her Weibo was directly exposed to the top searches, with the index increasing by 800. During the interview, Xianglan also announced that she would be retiring from acting and even praised the production crew of Twin. She said that Ai Mengmeng was one of the most talented actresses she had ever seen. She had high hopes for Twin and also had high hopes for Ai Mengmeng. She even tagged Ai Mengmeng on Weibo. To be honest, one of them was an A-list celebrity whose status far exceeded Ai Jia's and had more than 100 million followers on Weibo. The other was just a C-list celebrity who was surrounded by negative news. Now that they had received advice from a celebrity, the celebrity immediately retreated from the entertainment industry. This kind of operation was very much like a senior guiding a junior. Ai Mengmeng gained more than 1 million fans, and they were all active fans. She went from being a has-been celebrity with negative news to becoming the center of attention. Her guest appearance in Twin also received attention, because Xianglan even tagged the cast of Twin. Furthermore, Twin was premiering at 8 p.m. At this time, according to Cat Eye's statistics, the number of people who wanted to watch Twin had already reached 140,000. This number was not shocking when compared to a commercial film, but it was already very shocking when compared to an artistic film. Furthermore, as of 6 p.m., the pre-sales had already exceeded 100 million. Ai Jia's crew saw that things weren't going well, so they threw a bucket of dirty water at Ai Mengmeng. They wanted to pull down Twin's popularity among the people. However, because of their goddess, no matter what they did, it wouldn't work. Fortunately, the box office on that day crushed Twin. After a day of screening, it had earned more than 300 million. Ai Jia was very confident. So what if it had a good reputation? Box office was what mattered. She got someone to write an article specifically to suppress Hehuan. It was also to disgust her. The topic was that the box office earnings of Twin were terrible. Even with Xianglan's support, it was useless. The script was already published and it even bought the top spot on the trending searches. However, very quickly, the top trending search was the premiere of Twin. But that wasn't the most important thing. What was the topic that dominated the search list for the whole night? #Hehuan, the director of Twin, looks weak. #recreating Hehuan's fairy-like looks. #how can Hehuan be so beautiful? #Hehuan lives in a big villa. Chapter 4592. In one night, the number of comments about Hehuan had reached a staggering 1 billion. She had always kept a low profile and only had 8 million followers on Weibo. Now, her followers had shot up to 20 million. She was equivalent to a popular celebrity, and most of them were fans of her looks. They were not there for her talent at all. At this time, at the venue of the premiere of Twin, Hehuan and Qin Mo were walking the red carpet. The weather was a little cold, but Hehuan still wore an evening gown. Chanel's classic little black dress had a strapless spaghetti strap style, revealing the fair skin of her neck and beautiful lines. There was only a single diamond on her neck, and the waist of the dress was tight, while the bottom was a long muslin dress. The combination of white and black, coupled with her perfect face, made her look like a little fairy. Hehuan gave off the feeling of being pampered. She was 33 years old, but at that moment, she looked like she was only 23. Beside her, the outstanding Qin Mo looked even more mature. Enchanting also walked the red carpet with them. He and Qin Mo stood on both sides of Hehuan. Hehuan held Qin Mo's arm with one hand and held Enchanting's hand with the other. While everyone was wondering about the background of this good-looking boy, Enchanting was introduced to the public in a public way by Qin Mo. This was also a form of pressure, but also a form of tacit approval. Enchanting was already a member of the Qin family. He could come and go with Qin Mo at any time. His status was naturally high. At that moment, the three of them stood in front of the signing board and took their first group photo. Of course, their family photo was later published in King magazine. There was also a group photo of Enchanting and Yi Huan sitting alone on the sofa. Yes, they looked like brothers. And now, the group photo of the three of them was quickly on Weibo. Hashtag godlike looks of the family of three. Hashtag Yi Huan is a winner in life. All in all, Enchanting became popular in an instant. Some talent scouts even had ideas about him. But when they thought about how he was personally brought up by Qin Mo, they thought that he would not walk the path of an artist. After Yi Huan and Qin Mo walked the red carpet, they accepted an exclusive interview. Enchanting was also there, and he performed exceptionally well. He was outstanding and generous, and his aura did not lose to Qin He and his wife at all. After the interview, Yi Huan walked into the auditorium and asked Qin Mo, "I don't think Rong Yu and Ai Meng are here." As she said that, she said with some worry, "I'm a little worried about Ai Meng. Will she not come?" Today, her negative news was brought up again. She has been on the hot search list for more than 30 times. I'm afraid that she will be traumatized and not dare to come out. Qin Mo looked at her and said, "You're the one who made her the most searched topic, right? Mrs. Qin, you really love Ai Meng." Yi Huan snorted softly. "You're the true love." She regretted it as soon as she finished speaking. Her unintentional words had simply given Qin Mo an advantage. So she glared at him. Qin Mo laughed. "Yes, I'm your true love." Yi Huan was speechless. She took out her phone from her handbag and dialed Rong Yu's number. But after 2 minutes, no one picked up. Yi Huan was a little worried and looked at Qin Mo. Is he really not coming? Qin Mo was still smiling. "He will come." Yi Huan glanced at him. "How did you know? Are you that good?" Qin Mo didn't say anything. He just looked at Yi Huan with a meaningful look. Yi Huan's face turned red. Qin Mo laughed again and said hatefully, blushing so easily, "You're really like a little girl now." Chapter 45-93. Qin Mo smiled again and said hatefully, "You're blushing so easily. You're really like a little girl now." He even turned around and looked at Enchanting. "Do you think your aunt is a little girl?" Enchanting couldn't interrupt, so he pursed his lips and smiled. Qin Mo was in a good mood and said, "Go sit down and wait, there's still some time before the premiere." Yi Huan couldn't help but look up at him and ask, "Why aren't you worried at all?" Qin Mo looked at her for a long time before he chuckled softly. "What do I have to worry about? This is Ai Mingming's life and Rong Yu's wife's life. It's not my wife's life." Yi Huan was a little shocked. She bit her lip and said softly, "That's not right. You've put in so much effort. If Ai Meng doesn't come, wouldn't it be a waste?" Qin Mo knocked her on the head. "Why are you so silly? Think about it yourself. What I did is what I did. If she doesn't come, it's her loss, not mine, isn't it?" Yi Huan was once again struck dumb by his reasoning. She nodded and said, "Yes, yes, yes. You're right." Qin Mo pinched her little nose. "Of course I'm right, so you have to listen to me." Yi Huan snorted. These sweet scenes were portrayed in the cameras of the reporters and became a hot topic again and again. Just an hour before the premiere, Rong Yu was looking at his wife with a book in his hand in his luxurious apartment. Ai Meng was sitting on the sofa watching TV, but he knew that she was absent-minded because her eyes were not focused. After watching for a while, he asked her gently, "Have you decided not to go?" Ai Meng nodded. "I'm just a supporting character, not even a part, so I'm not going." After she said that, Rongyu didn't say anything for a long time. AI Meng Meng couldn't help but turn around and look at him. Actually, you can go. Rongyu smiled gently. Why would I go if you're not going? As he spoke, he lowered his head to read his book, looking calm and composed. AI Meng Meng pretended to continue watching TV, but after a while, she couldn't help but ask him, why didn't you persuade me? Rongyu was very calm and smiled. Persuade what? AI Meng Meng was startled and said, persuade me to go to the premiere. After she said that, Rongyu gave a long "oh" and then lowered his head to focus on his book again. AI Meng Meng couldn't wait any longer, so she moved a little closer and said very softly, you really don't want to? Rongyu nodded again. AI Meng Meng could not hold it in any longer. They made me sound really bad. Rongyu finally put down the book in his hand and looked at her quietly. His voice was slow and gentle. Meng Meng, no matter what the outside world says, I will bear it with you and face it together. AI Meng Meng was a little touched. She bit her lips and said guiltily, Rongyu, I'm sorry. He smiled faintly, then thought for a while and said, oh yeah, I got someone to buy a piece of land in the countryside 2 days ago. AI Meng Meng was a little surprised by his change of topic, so she asked him, why did you buy land? Rongyu said naturally, build a house and raise some chickens and ducks. Just the two of us living together. We won't see outsiders, we won't use cell phones, and we won't have children. We'll reduce our contact with the outside world. That way, we can stand aloof from the world and no matter what people say, it won't hurt us, right? Chapter 45-94. Rongyu said naturally, build a house and raise some chickens and ducks. Just the two of us will live together. We won't see anyone outside, we won't use our phones, and we won't have kids. We'll reduce our contact with the outside world. That way, we can stand aloof from the world and no matter what others say, they won't be able to harm us, right? AI Meng Meng looked at him with a blank expression. After a long time, she said softly, why do I find this a little weird? Rongyu, are you mocking me? She had always thought that he would at least avoid it when she asked. However, not only did Rongyu not avoid it, he even said straightforwardly, yeah, you're not that stupid after all. She thought that he was going to get angry again, but Rongyu lowered his head to read his book again. AI Meng Meng was especially shocked. She couldn't help but go over and pull his arm. Her voice was very delicate and soft. Actually, you want me to go, don't you? Rongyu snorted softly again as a reply. AI Meng Meng looked at him for a long time and finally couldn't help but ask softly, if I go, will you be very happy? Rongyu looked up at her, his gaze focused and quiet. After a long time, he said softly, if you go, it's for yourself. AI Meng Meng was a little displeased. Can't you say something nicer? Rongyu smiled warmly and warmly. He had always been a gentleman. Seeing her like this, he would look at her warmly. AI Meng Meng didn't say anything and just looked at him. After a long time, she finally said, all right then, I'll go. Otherwise, people will say that I'm going to hide for the rest of my life. Rongyu smiled even more warmly and closed the book in his hands. I didn't say that. All right, since we've decided to go, let's get changed and go. He got up and AI Meng Meng grabbed his arm. Rongyu, did you already know that I would go? He stood up and lowered his head. His gaze met hers and he smiled. I know you're not happy either. As he spoke, he went to change his clothes. AI Meng Meng sat where she was and murmured, it's that simple. Rongyu probably heard it. His voice came from the direction of the changing room. It's always that simple. Life is actually very simple. Black and white, yes and no. How can there be so much ambiguity? If it's always like that, it'll be too tiring. AI Meng Meng couldn't help but retort, you make it sound so easy, as if everything is very simple. Then in the future, you will be the one to take out the garbage at home. Rongyu had already changed into a new set of clothes. He smiled amiably and said, I say, you must have a pig's brain. You can't even sort garbage. Isn't it a waste to live in this world, food, right? Or air? AI Meng Meng asked angrily. She had long forgotten what he had said before. Rongyu was still smiling casually. After a while, he spoke again, it's Rongyu. Aren't you wasting such a good Rongyu by being so stupid? AI Meng Meng savored it and felt that her husband was invincibly shameless. He didn't seem to be like this in the past. She walked forward and tugged on his tie gently. What made Mr. Rong so shameless? Rongyu patted her hand gently and then smiled softly, aren't married men all like this? Chapter 4595. AI Meng Meng was speechless when he said that. She bit her lip and said, I'm going to change. She had only taken a step when Rongyu grabbed her wrist in a forceful manner that was rarely seen. AI Meng Meng was stunned for a moment and then looked at him. Rongyu lowered his voice and said, as long as it's appropriate. AI Meng Meng bit her lip and nodded. She went to change into a sweater skirt and a coat. It was simple and appropriate. Rongyu drove his own car and AI Meng Meng sat beside him without saying anything. She would occasionally check Weibo. Rongyu said in a low voice as he drove, if I were you, I wouldn't be checking Weibo now. It must be an article to provoke you. AI Meng Meng put down her phone and looked at Rongyu. How did you know? Rongyu was still driving and said indifferently, because I'm not as stupid as you. After saying that, he glanced at her with a doting look in his eyes. AI Meng Meng met his gaze and put her hands on her knees, looking a little restrained. After a long time, she said in a low voice, why me? Rongyu sighed as he drove. Why not you? AI Meng Meng's lips moved slightly and she said in a low voice, Rongyu, I actually don't have any good points. You do, Rongyu said with certainty. AI Meng Meng let out an awe and looked at him in disbelief. Rongyu said with a smile, you're good looking. AI Meng Meng was stunned and said in a low voice, is that a good point? Rongyu chuckled. For a husband, yes. AI Meng Meng was speechless and looked at the road in front of her. Rongyu had always been very calm and didn't say anything. In the end, AI Meng Meng couldn't help but say, they said on Weibo that I don't dare to come out like a turtle. Well, sometimes a little. Rongyu nodded in agreement. AI Meng Meng was furious. She glared at him and said, I came out, okay? I didn't hide. Rongyu just smiled and looked extremely tolerant. After about 20 minutes, his car stopped in front of the red carpet of the premiere, causing a commotion. On one hand, it was because AI Meng Meng was the female lead in the center of the storm, and on the other hand, it was because of Rongyu's halo. Rongyu was now the hottest young screenwriter, and he was very good-looking. He even had a little scandal with Yi-Huan. But no one had expected such a decent person to marry AI Meng Meng. But now, they appeared openly. Rongyu's hand was holding AI Meng Meng's. He would not distance himself from her because of her past. Just like he said, they were husband and wife. Husband and wife share weal and woe, they are one. For example, in front of so many eyes and cameras, AI Meng Meng was actually a little timid. She even wanted to retreat a little, but Rongyu wouldn't allow her to retreat. His hand firmly grasped hers, not giving her a chance to break free. He smiled at the media and looked at AI Meng Meng with a gentle gaze, as if there was only one of her in the entire world. Slowly, AI Meng Meng felt relieved. She even smiled slightly. It was a smile that could only be seen when a man accepted and loved her. It was a smile that could only be seen when one was happy. Ronyu held her hand and said in a low voice, "Isn't this good? It's not that hard." Chapter 4596. Updated quickly, Ai Meng Meng was a little dazed. After a while, she tilted her head and smiled. "I think so." Ronyu smiled again and did not say anything else. They just accepted the media's interview. The media's questions were very harsh. They did not give AI Meng Meng any face. They were basically saying that a notorious artist like AI Meng Meng did not deserve to be with a young man like Ronyu. AI Meng Meng was a little nervous and angry. However, her nervousness and anger were for Ronyu. She was afraid that he would not be able to accept it. However, Ronyu was very calm. At least, he was much calmer than her. Facing the harsh media, Ronyu smiled. "Today, I am not here as the producer of Twin. I am here because I am Ming Ming's husband. She is great, not only in the movie, but also in real life. I am very grateful to her as my wife. She was my wife in the dark and dark of my life. Meng Meng did not give up on me. She took care of me and now, she has become a part of my life." The crowd was a little moved. Because Ronyu said that he had a serious illness and that he might not be able to have children in the future, the media did not say anything. Ronyu's tone was extremely firm. "I do not feel gratitude towards my wife. I truly like and love her. Now, in the future, she will bear all the pain in the past with me. Also, she will not make a comeback and will not take on any more shows, because..." Ronyu's gaze became affectionate. "I can take care of my own woman." Everyone was moved and couldn't say a word. AI Meng Meng was crying. Ronyu smiled. His voice was unbelievably soft and gentle. "Why are you crying? Aren't you usually fierce?" AI Meng Meng bit her lips and did not say anything for a long time. At this moment, there was a burst of applause. It was for Ronyu and Ronyu's love. Ronyu reached out and wiped away his wife's tears. Then, he smiled. "When we got married, I said that we will share weal and woe together. I will protect you forever and stand in front of you. So, there is nothing to be afraid of. When everything comes, I will be there." AI Meng Meng was originally just shedding tears, but now she was crying uncontrollably like a child. No one laughed, not even Ronyu. He continued to gently wipe away her tears. Finally, he kissed her, declaring their love in front of everyone. Sometimes, it is very mysterious, but love comes at the right time. Many female reporters were wiping their tears. Who could be free from mistakes? How many people could be forgiven and receive love like Ronyu? Although Twin had yet to be decided, Ai Meng Meng was already a winner in life. Tonight, there was finally a trending topic about Hehuan. #RonguLovius ranked first. At the same time, the premiere of Twin had also begun. The box office for the day was almost set, but on the day of 215, Twin and AIGA's movie had already reached a standstill. Both had more than 50 million. However, Twin had a strong momentum. After an hour of screening, it had a rating of 8. 8 on Douban and 9.6 on Maoyan. It was a rare high score in recent years. AIGA could not sit still anymore. She was in the living room of the high-class villa, talking on the phone while watching the live broadcast on the television. She looked at Hehuan and Qin Mo's lovey-dovey appearance and Ai Mingming's blissful smile with Rong Yu's company. If they were all blissful, what about her? Chapter 4597. Memorize, fast updates. Ai Jia gripped her phone so tightly that her knuckles were almost white. She tried her best to hold it in. After a long time, she said in an extremely distorted voice and expression, "Even this little bitch can be happy." Why? Then, she smashed a lot of things in the room. Phones, televisions, everything. Smashed to smithereens. With a shattering sound, all the expensive things in the villa were smashed. But Ai Jia didn't care. What she cared about was that everyone was happy. What she cared about was that she might be pressed to the floor by Hehuan's twin. She would become a laughingstock if a commercial film couldn't beat an art house film. Ai Jia panted, her eyes filled with an indescribable melancholy. Even more sinister. Just then, a soft cry came from upstairs. She snapped out of her trance. Yes, she hadn't lost. She hadn't, the day ended. Twins' box office collection was more than 130 million. But by midnight, the pre-sales had already exceeded 100 million. The expected box office collection of 215 million would be a huge figure of 300 million. This result made everyone look at it, both within and outside the industry. Moreover, Weibo had become a spiritual shareholder. Twins fans kept checking the box office collection results. Of course, there were also those who went to watch it twice or thrice. Other than Qin Mo's promotion, Twin was indeed worthy of such a result. Industry critics said that the filming method was experienced and the editing was superb. Although it was an art house film, the pace was comparable to a suspense film. At the same time, it didn't lose the beauty of an art house film. And the biggest Easter egg in the film was Ai Mingming's 5-minute performance. That was the best performance Ai Mingming had ever given in her career. But there was no performance. Everything was just herself. Ai Mingming's joy and loss when she first arrived in B City, and the disappointment and fear in her eyes when she fell to the bottom of the abyss, were all vividly portrayed by Ai Mingming. Some veteran internet celebrity fans sighed. They didn't know if Twin was an art house film or an exploration of human nature. Of course, the biggest winners were still the male and female leads. At the end of the premiere, Hehuan hugged them and smiled. This should be a film that will bring you many awards. Good luck. Kong Chiao also let out a long sigh. He had seen the original film before, and it was already very perfect. However, he did not expect that after the re-editing, it would be so amazing. His scenes were reduced, but the effect was much better than before. He recognized at a glance that it was Qin Mo's technique. It was a pity that Qin Mo did not become a director. Because of the huge success, Qin Mo held a small celebration party at the suggestion of Qin Mo. The staff and the original lead actors all attended the party. The venue was an exquisite small hall in Lan Yu's Grand Hyatt Hotel. It was very warm in the hall, and everyone was still in their formal wear. However, since they were family, they were very relaxed, and Hehuan even took off her high heels. Qin Mo leaned against her and whispered, "Mrs. Qin, you are too full of yourself." Hehuan sat on the sofa and looked up at him. Smiling sweetly, she said, "It's rare." She even picked up a glass of cocktail and took a few sips in a provocative manner. Qin Mo watched as her beautiful lips pressed against the rim of the glass, and then the dark red liquid slid down her little throat. He knew that she did it on purpose, so he leaned closer to her, and his voice suddenly became hoarse. "You did it on purpose, huh?" Chapter 4598. He knew that she did it on purpose, so he leaned closer to her and said in a hoarse voice, "You did it on purpose, huh?" Huan was still smiling sweetly, leaning back on the sofa, looking very relaxed. If it had been before, Qin Mo would never have allowed her to appear in front of others like this. But today, everyone was in a good mood, and Huan was in a good mood, especially since they had just had a fight. He wanted to make her happy, and he wanted to please her. So he leaned close to her ear and said in a hoarse voice, "Don't go too far, Mrs. Qin, or else what?" She tilted her head and looked at him. There was a hint of mischief in her eyes, and there was even a little spark in them. Qin Mo's heart was burning. He leaned over and said something, then looked at her meaningfully before going to socialize with the others. Huan was still sitting, thinking about what Mrs. Qin had said. He told her not to get drunk. She insisted on getting drunk, and she wanted him to take care of her as if she was a baby. Mrs. Qin thought childishly, since Huan wasn't here, she was the youngest. At this time, she automatically ignored Shinting. Ai Meng and Rong Yu also attended. Rong Yu couldn't drink, so Ai Meng spent most of the time with him. Later, Qin Mo dragged Rong Yu away, and Ai Meng was a little bored by herself, so Huan asked Shinting to call her over. The two unfamiliar women drank a little, so they were much more relaxed, and some of their words became bolder. Ai Meng was also drunk, and she said everything she should and shouldn't say. Huan thought it was quite interesting, and she finally understood why Rong Yu liked Ai Meng. No, it wasn't like, it was love. Later, Ai Meng was dragged away by Rong Yu, and they seemed to have gone home. Huan's brain wasn't working well after 2 glasses of wine, so she didn't know where Ai Meng was. When she sobered up a little, she was on the balcony of the banquet hall. It was a little cold, but not too cold. Looking outside through a layer of glass, because it was late at night, and because it was very cold, there was a thin layer of fog in the sky. Huan thought to herself that she and Rong Yu had never fallen in love with each other. They had known each other for many years and seemed to like each other for many years, but she had never thought of bringing him home because she was worried about Qin Mo. She was afraid of Qin Mo, and she knew that Qin Mo would be angry. But at that time, when she was young, she clearly felt that Qin Mo had nothing to do with her. She also thought that maybe it was because she was afraid that if Qin Mo found out, he wouldn't force her to drink the damn red bean soup anymore. Even if he was fierce, he wouldn't be fierce to her. He might find another girl to be fierce to and force her to do all sorts of things. Mrs. Qin's heart was filled with sentiments. She thought that she had always cared about Qin Mo. She cared about him the most, even when she thought she had fallen in love with Rong Yu. She turned around to look for Qin Mo. But when she turned around, Qin Mo was right behind her. His face was handsome, and he had always looked good. There was a touch of gentleness in his eyes that she could read. Huan's heart suddenly warmed up, and he was even a little sad amidst this feeling. It was not for himself, but for Qin Mo. How long had he been behind her? Just like that, they stared at each other in the middle of the night, not saying a word. However, the night was so beautiful. Chapter 45-99. Huan's eyes became gentler. Qin Mo finally took a step forward and smiled. Mrs. Qin, I told you that you're too full of yourself. How many glasses did you drink? Usually, she wouldn't look at him like this. She didn't hide it at all. His little princess Huan was very proud and never took the initiative. Huan tilted her head and chuckled. Only 2 cups. In the end, he still stepped forward and held her hand. His voice was a few degrees lower. But I think you're drunk. Huan didn't say a word and continued to look at him. Eventually, she placed her little hand on his shoulder and rested her little chin on his shoulder. Her voice was especially soft and gentle. Chin mo, I want to go home. His heart was also boiling. After a long time, he replied, okay. He carried her and walked out. Hee-Hwan only came back to her senses when they were in the car. She looked at Chin mo and asked, where's Shinting? They were sitting in the back seat together and old Zhao was driving. Chin mo hugged her and said in a low voice, he's only 13. He's long gone to bed. He's not as crazy as you. Oh, Hee-Hwan replied, then fell into his arms and didn't say anything. Chin mo could actually feel that she had something on her mind. After a while, he lowered his head and asked, what are you thinking about? Hee-Hwan shook her head. Nothing. Chin mo smiled and didn't say much. After all, old Zhao was in the car and he didn't want to be a joke. Just like that, the car slowly drove back to their old apartment. Hee-Hwan came back to her senses. Why are we here? Chin mo carried her out of the car and explained, it's too late. We'll wake Shinting up if we go back. Hee-Hwan was a little shocked. What kind of reason was that? But it was late at night and she had drunk a little, so she couldn't resist. She just fell into his arms and listened to his heartbeat. Then, she felt the elevator going straight up. Her heart was beating a little faster. She couldn't tell if it was his or hers. Just when he was at the peak of his emotions, the elevator dinged and he carried her home. The heater in the apartment had been turned on long ago, so they didn't feel cold. This was probably arranged by Chin mo in advance. Hee-Hwan drank a little too much, but she was still thinking that he was actually a very considerate and gentle man. It was up to her to ask for or repay him. When they got home, he wasn't in a hurry to let her sleep, nor did he mention that he wanted to shower. Instead, they sat in the living room and watched a movie. He put on a romantic movie and excitedly brought over a bottle of red wine, pouring 2 glasses for each of them. It was rare for Hee-Hwan to be so happy. She had been tense for a long time. She looked at him sideways and said, you still want to celebrate? I thought you'd want me to take a shower and go to bed. Otherwise, I'd have to change out of this gown. Chin mo stretched out his long arms and legs and looked at her sideways. It's quite nice. There's no need to change. Besides, it's not cold at home, right? With that said, he swept her into his arms. His embrace was very warm and indeed not cold. Hee-Hwan didn't say anything else. She just leaned gently in his arms, holding a glass of wine in her hand and murmured, a toast to the past. He smiled. Accompany me. He said these 3 words casually. In fact, only he knew how unhappy and lonely he had been these past few years. On such a night, he always hoped that someone would accompany him. Hee-Hwan took a sip of wine and looked at him just like that. Chapter 4600. Hee-Hwan took a sip of wine and stared at him. Chin mo just smiled. Hee-Hwan suddenly felt sad for him. She lowered her voice and said, Chin mo, it hasn't been easy for you all these years, has it? Chin mo was probably in a good mood. He teased her and smiled. It's not bad. At least there's someone in your heart. Hee-Hwan glanced at him. I thought you had a bunch of people in your heart. Chin mo smiled and hugged her shoulders. Mrs. Chin, I'm not as loving as you think. As he said that, he seemed to have thought of something. He said in a low voice, how about you? Have you been good all these years? Hee-Hwan broke free from him and sat on the other side. Then, she said in a low voice, I don't know if it's good or not, but I've been struggling. Should I come back? Will there be someone else by your side when you come back? Even though their relationship had been extremely bad all these years, Huan could still vaguely feel that he was in her heart. After all, they had been husband and wife. After Huan said that, she stared at him. There was something that could be called water in her eyes. It wasn't tears or crying. It was just emotional. Although they were together, they still missed out on many years. They had missed out on Qin Mo and Huan's best years. Mrs. Qin wasn't usually so emotional, but she drank wine today. She was very, very sad. She was extremely sad. She leaned her head on the sofa and stared at the wine in the glass in her hand. She said very softly, Qin Mo, I want to go back to the past. If I can go back, I will definitely love you well, even more than I do now. Qin Mo knew that she had drunk too much. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said these words even if she was beaten to death. However, he still remained calm and accompanied her. He just secretly recorded everything she said so that he wouldn't be afraid that she wouldn't admit it in the future. Qin Mo smiled. Mrs. Qin, it's 2019 now. Don't be so emotional. We are together now, okay? She really drank a little too much. Normally, she wouldn't act coquettishly and be so unreasonable. Her petite face was a little tipsy as she laid on the sofa and whispered, but I missed out on a lot. As she spoke, she straightened her body and reached out to rub his face. Mrs. Qin's eyes were full of girlish love. She bit her lips and said in a soft and sweet voice, but Qin Mo, I missed your best time. She missed him when he was 20, when he was 30, the best time of a man's life. Used to be angry with him, used to be Cold War with him, and separation. Huan was drunk. She collapsed on his shoulder and said sadly, Qin Mo, I can't even tell if it was me or you who was cruel all these years. We've actually been separated for so many years. Qin Mo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She had drunk too much, and yet she kept thinking about this. However, his heart softened. He still couldn't let go of Huan. She loved him so much in her heart. Mr. Qin is also full of himself. Qin Mo's gaze was gentle as he looked at his wife. She was rarely so cute. He had suffered enough from her ever since they were young, and tonight, he seemed to be able to get back at her with interest. Qin Mo couldn't help but touch Huan's face. Of course you're cruel. You're a cruel little thing who abandoned your husband and children. Chapter 4601. Qin Mo couldn't help but touch Huan's face with his fingers. Of course you're cruel. You're a cruel little thing who abandoned your husband and children. After saying that it wasn't enough, he pinched her cheek harshly. Huan let out a strange cry. Her temperament was gone, as if she had returned to her teenage years. Qin Mo stared at her for a while and suddenly said, You're only 33 years old. Huan, I was 32 when I married you. And now, he was 40. Qin Mo thought that he was actually 40, 7 years older than her. He suddenly worried that she would think that he was old, so he pinched her chin gently. Do you think that I'm old, huh? He looked quite serious. Huan was speechless. She stared at him for a long time. Qin Mo, you're so boring. Qin Mo tightened his grip, and she let out a strange cry. Later, she was still tired, but Qin Mo didn't let her sleep and only let her lean on him. Huan leaned against his chest, so sleepy that her eyes were closed. Her voice was as innocent as a little lamb. Qin Mo, what's wrong with you today? Qin Mo looked down at the little girl in his arms. He had liked the little girl for many years. His heart softened and he murmured, Huan, this is a once-in-a-lifetime night. She had said a lot to him tonight. He was very happy and wanted to say and do something, but in the end, he just wanted to spend the night alone with her. He wouldn't be lonely tonight with Huan's company. Huan fell asleep in his arms. Qin Mo looked at the time. It was 3:30 in the morning. He chuckled. She had endured long enough. The heater was good, but it was still night time. Huan squeezed into his arms, looking very cute and coquettish. Qin Mo took the coat from the back of the sofa and put it on her. He adjusted his body and let her fall into his arms comfortably. On the coffee table, there was still a little wine left in the goblet. It swayed gently, exuding a charming color in the night. Qin Mo suddenly didn't want to waste this night, this fine wine, and Huan's sudden gentleness. He reached for the glass and drank it in turn. Drinking with this gentle night, drinking with tonight's affection, drinking with the little fellow in his arms, everything was so wonderful that he almost didn't want to sleep. But when his hand touched her face and saw the faint bruise under her eyes, he still hesitated and flinched. In the end, he could only sigh and let her go. Having a hangover and staying up late was extremely difficult, especially when Huan's health wasn't good. She woke up from her dream and sat up. It was already 11:00 in the morning, and the sun was shining brightly. Huan scratched her hair, feeling a headache coming on. Then, as if remembering something, she grabbed her phone and scrolled through the Cat Eye box office rankings. To her surprise, she saw that Twin was at the top of the box office today. As of now, it had already grossed 150 million yuan. Meanwhile, AIG's commercial film, which was currently in production, had less than 20 million yuan and was only 130 million yuan. Huan rubbed her eyes. She couldn't believe that she had really surpassed it. At this time, Qin Mo happened to come over. Huan raised her eyes and looked at him eagerly. Her voice was like that of a little sheep. Qin Mo, you've topped the box office. Qin Mo walked over in a formal suit. He leaned over and kissed her. There was a hint of a smile in his voice. Isn't it normal? I did it myself. Huan snorted. You're very smelly now. Chapter 4602. Qin Mo laughed and said in a lower voice, "Be more elegant." Huan looked at him for a while, and there was a trace of moisture in her eyes. It was a unique expression of someone who had just woken up. Qin Mo couldn't help kissing her eyelids again. He looked up and said, "What do you want to ask?" Huan put her arms around his neck and said, "How much box office did you earn?" She dragged her voice and said coquettishly, "How much did you earn in the box office?" Qin Mo lowered his head and said in a hoarse voice, "Don't you have confidence in yourself?" Huan's eyes widened, as if she couldn't believe it. After a while, she asked him softly, "Qin Mo, do you mean that the data is real?" "Of course." There was a hint of a smile in Qin Mo's eyes. "Don't you have confidence in yourself? Don't you have confidence in your husband?" Huan glanced at him again, but she didn't have time to argue with him because the surprise came too fast. She just couldn't believe it. After a long time, she bit her lips and said, "You're not trying to make me happy, are you?" It wasn't like he hadn't spent a fortune to make her happy before. Qin Mo chuckled. "I think I've made myself very clear, Mrs. Qin. Congratulations on your talent, your husband is perfect, and you have a great crew. That's why this film is so popular." He paused and said, "It's estimated that the box office will be more than 2 billion. Huan was a little proud, but she didn't get too full of herself. She asked again, "How did that happen?" Qin Mo smiled and said, "Opportunities are always given to those who are prepared." Huan continued, "But I wasn't prepared. AIG's attack caught me off guard. Also, about AI Meng Meng, I was completely dumbfounded. When she spoke, she was like a little girl. Qin Mo couldn't stand it and rolled his eyes. But you found yourself a good husband many years ago, didn't you? He Huan stared at him. But there was a smile in her eyes. Qin Mo didn't make a sound. He let her stare at him and let her hug him. Finally, the smile in her eyes became even more obvious. She bit her lower lip and said, "Yeah, it seems like it, Qin Mo. It seems that my talent is not as good as my foresight." Qin Mo pinched her little face. "I picked you, Mrs. Qin." He Huan's eyes seemed to be filled with countless stars. "That's not right, Qin Mo." He immediately changed his tone and spoke in a friendly tone. "What did I do wrong? Tell me." He Huan was a little shy, but she was really happy today. She didn't want to let go of him, not now, but in the future. She blushed at her own shameful thoughts. After a long time, she stuttered, "Actually, I used to, like you too." Qin Mo was amused, but he pretended to be surprised. "Mrs. Qin, are you confessing your love to me?" He Huan snorted. "You're laughing at me. I wouldn't dare." He was talking to her in that damned tone of voice again, and that damned He Huan was a sucker for it. She looked at him weakly and couldn't speak for a long time. She refused to let go of him. Qin Mo smiled. "Let's have a meeting in the morning." He Huan exclaimed and was hit by Qin Mo's finger. "What are you thinking, Mrs. Qin?" "I'm talking about the meeting at King Entertainment. As for anything else, don't even think about it today." Chapter 4603. Memorize, updated quickly, He Huan exclaimed as Qin Mo tapped her with his finger. "What are you thinking about, Mrs. Qin?" "I was talking about going to King Entertainment for a meeting. As for anything else, don't even think about it today. Don't even think about it. It's a sin to even think about it." This was what Qin Mo had been saying to her recently. He Huan felt gloomy when she heard that. Her little thoughts were shattered by him. She felt that Qin Mo didn't love her as much anymore. Yes, he didn't love her anymore. He didn't coax her anymore. All he cared about was the movie and the box office. When she complained in a petulant manner, Qin Mo laughed. "I'm with you every day and you despise me. Now that I'm busy with my career, you still despise me. How can there be such logic in this world, huh?" He Huan retreated and he hugged her gently. He teased her for a while before letting her go. He said regretfully, "I'm going to the meeting." He Huan glared at him. Qin Mo laughed. "Breakfast?" "No, lunch is ready. A pig who sleeps until noon." He Huan widened her eyes and glared at him. Qin Mo laughed again. All right. Even a pig is a cute little pig, okay?" He Huan pulled up the blanket and lay down again. "Then I'll just be a pig." Qin Mo gently pulled the blanket off her face. He said in a doting tone, "Eat something and go back to the villa later. Shen Ting is still at home. You have to take care of the child's feelings." He Huan was about to explode. He was the one who insisted on staying in the condominium, but now he was blaming him. How could there be logic in this world? Qin Mo read the meaning in her eyes and chuckled. "I'm the boss in the family. I'm the logic." He Huan was so angry that she kicked him twice. Qin Mo smiled again before he left. When He Huan was left alone, she laid on the bed, feeling surreal. Because Twin was really the first in the box office. After giving it some thought, she immediately logged onto a certain platform and realized that the total screening schedule for the next 3 days had started to change. Initially, Twin only had an average screening schedule of 25%, but now, it had increased to more than 30%, the same as AIG's new film. Hee-hwan thought that if the box office and reputation of Twin improved, it would definitely crush AIG's new film in the future. She really didn't expect the effect to be so good. She couldn't help but read the movie reviews again. Then, she got up to eat something and drove back to the villa to watch a movie with Enchanting. She had been busy yesterday, so she didn't have much time to watch the movie. Now that she was sitting in the cinema, she could truly feel Chin Mo's amazing editing skills. He really was a genius. If he became a director, he would definitely be famous all over the world. However, he was a businessman, and he had to manage such a huge business empire. He had no time to play around. Hee-hwan wore a mask when she went out, and so did Enchanting. To Enchanting, the downside of becoming famous overnight was that girls would smile sweetly at him wherever he went. There were girls ranging from 10-year-old girls to 50-year-old aunties, which troubled him quite a bit. However, as he grew older, Enchanting became like the other men in the Chin family. He kept strangers away and gave off an unapproachable vibe. Of course, that was except for Hee-hwan. At that moment, Enchanting was sitting in the cinema, surrounded by darkness. He couldn't help but take off his mask and whispered, "It's a little cold in here. Auntie, I'll go get you a cup of hot milk tea." Although he called Hee-hwan auntie, and Hee-hwan could indeed be his mother at 33 years old, she was still very young and wasn't even as tall as him. Chapter 4604. Although he called Hee-hwan auntie and Hee-hwan was 33 years old and could be his mother, Hee-hwan was very small and was not even as tall as him. Enchanting felt that Hee-hwan and Hee-hwan needed to be taken care of. He and his uncle were men and it was their responsibility to take care of the weak. Whenever he went out with Hee-hwan, he would swipe his card and Hee-hwan would let him do it. She treated him like a little adult, which was what Enchanting liked. In fact, after he entered the Chin family, except for the 1 million Chin Mo deposited into his account in the first month, he refused Chin Mo's financial support. He used the money to invest and it was enough for his own use. Besides the expenses for himself and Hee-hwan, he would sometimes invite Hee-hwan to travel abroad. When Enchanting was working, the 1 million had accumulated to tens of millions. When he finished speaking, Hee-hwan nodded. "All right." She had been sitting there for an hour and felt cold. Enchanting went out to get some fresh air. Soon, he came back with the things he bought. He opened the lid and handed it to Hee-hwan. Naturally, Hee-hwan took a sip and felt warm from the bottom of her heart to the bottom of her body. From the bottom of her heart, she truly felt that Enchanting was a good person, and so was Yi Xiangnan. However, Xiangnan was born into a powerful family and was not willing to compromise on many things. On the other hand, Enchanting was a very tolerant boy and did not lack integrity. From the bottom of her heart, she liked Enchanting. Maybe because she was a woman, she hoped that Hee-hwan could live a good life, while Chin Mo was more willing to follow Hee-hwan's wishes. As Hee-hwan was thinking about this, Chin Mo's call came in. She glanced at it, hung up, and sent him a WeChat message. "Mrs. Chin, you are watching a movie with a man. How did you know?" Hee-hwan thought for a moment and added, "He is young, good-looking, and 100 times more considerate. It seems that Mrs. Chin is not going home tonight. Don't you want to confess who your adulterer is? I'm going to bring the adulterer home." Hee-hwan typed word by word, smiling as he typed. He could imagine how helpless Chin Mo was on the other side. At this moment, Enchanting suddenly leaned over and asked, "Is that uncle?" How could Enchanting see such news? Hee-hwan's hand shook, and the P30 he had just bought fell to the ground. He picked it up and saw that the screen was broken. She was speechless and couldn't say anything for a long time. Enchanting was also stunned. He wanted to say something, but Heartwarming spoke first. "Let's go buy a cell phone and eat out." Enchanting agreed. Then, he ignored everyone and continued watching the movie. President Qin was left in suspense, so no one paid attention to him. However, after the movie ended, Heartwarming and Enchanting ran into some trouble. She was recognized when she walked out of the theater, and with Enchanting by her side, it was hard not to attract attention. The fans screamed and swarmed over, asking for Heartwarming's autograph. Although Heartwarming was the director, she was very pretty. In the fans' hearts, she was the leading actress. Heartwarming signed about 10 autographs before she couldn't take it anymore. Not only the fans of Twin, but also the fans of AIG's movie also asked for Heartwarming's autograph. They didn't even want to watch AIG's movie anymore. The chaotic scene was captured on video, including the deserted entrance to AIG's movie, the scene where Heartwarming and Enchanting walked side by side, and the scene where Enchanting shielded Heartwarming with his thin body. It immediately became the #1 trending topic on Weibo. Chapter 4605. The scene of Enchanting shielding Heartwarming with his skinny body became the #1 trending topic on Weibo. #Twin director Heartwarming's new love little puppy. The title was sensational and the content was obviously defamatory. It was obviously IG's work. However, no one cared because Enchanting was a child of the Qin family and it was normal for Heartwarming to appear with him. Heartwarming even brought her new love to buy a phone and was recognized. She even brought her new love to the restaurant and reported to the head of the family. Qin Mo said that he would come over immediately and let them eat first. They couldn't eat with masks on, right? Heartwarming and Enchanting were recognized again. Fortunately, they were in a high-class restaurant and the people were more polite. They wouldn't be shot in the face. Heartwarming and Enchanting slowly stopped minding it, and so did Enchanting. They ordered 2 big meals. Enchanting looked at Heartwarming and smiled. "Auntie, can you finish all of them?" Heartwarming took a sip of water. "Why do you ask?" Enchanting looked down and said as he ordered, "Because you are very thin." As soon as Heartwarming heard that, she knew that Enchanting had listened to Qin Mo and started to watch over her. She didn't expose him, but she purposely enjoyed her meal. Well, she really liked Enchanting. If she were 20 years younger and grew up with Enchanting, Qin Mo probably wouldn't have anything to do with her anymore. What could a 13-year-old Qin Mo do? He only bully her. He was nowhere near as considerate as Enchanting. Heartwarming was like a mother-in-law who was more satisfied with her son-in-law. She also felt that Qin Mo had arranged it well. Enchanting came over early and not only took care of Heartwarming in the future, but he was also taking care of her now. Thinking about it, it was worth it. Heartwarming didn't feel that she had lost her integrity by following Qin Mo. As they ate, a photo was taken and posted on Weibo. Heartwarming saw it and so did Enchanting. Enchanting asked Heartwarming, "What should we do?" The great director ate his steak and drank a mouthful of aperitif before slowly saying, "Such big words. Your uncle isn't blind. Let him handle it. Otherwise, what's the point of having a man?" Enchanting actually felt that it made sense. Meanwhile, in King Entertainment's conference room, all the middle and upper management had secretly swiped the CEO's green hat. Of course, they knew it was Enchanting, a 13-year-old child. Even if he was a puppy, he was still too young. Who knew which blind person had written it? Seriously, he didn't even let a kid off. At the end of the meeting, Qin Mo asked Secretary He as he walked, "Did you find out who wrote that article?" Secretary He was a shrewd man. He didn't want his boss to think that he already knew about this, so he pretended not to know. CEO Chin is referring to. Chin Mo rolled his eyes at her and said in a low voice, "It's about He Huan and Shinting." Secretary He Huan had a look of realization on her face. That, it might have been AI Jia. The word might was commendable. No matter how smart Secretary He Huan was, she could tell that President Chin treated AI Jia differently. There were no romantic feelings between them, but there was something else. But she couldn't ask or say it out loud. Otherwise, she would lose her head. Chin Mo glanced at her again and instructed, "Write up about the case of AI Jia's crew stealing the box office. Make it the top trending topic. We must have evidence." Chapter 4606. Remember. Chin Mo glanced at her again before instructing, "Write up a report about AI Jia's crew stealing the box office. Make it the top trending topic. We must have evidence." He wouldn't suppress her private affairs either. That would be too deliberate and would lower his status. AI Jia had tried her best to defame He Huan for the sake of the box office. He had taken drastic measures to make it impossible for her to continue. Honestly speaking, Chin Mo had lost his patience with AI Jia. He even wanted her to disappear forever. He had the ability to do so, but he had always tolerated her. However, AI Jia wasn't satisfied and couldn't see the situation clearly. Chin Mo was in the midst of contemplating, so his expression didn't look too good. Secretary He was a little shocked. She had never seen President Chin show such an expression. She couldn't help but remind him, "President Chin." Chin Mo snapped out of his trance and lowered his voice. "Just do as I say. We'll talk about the rest later." Secretary He was stunned. There was something else. It seemed like AI Jia had offended President Chin. At one point, everyone in King Entertainment had thought that AI Jia was President Chin's mistress, but President Chin was deeply in love with Director He. But now, Secretary He wasn't so sure about the intensity of his hatred. Secretary He hesitated again and again. This veteran couldn't help but ask, "President Chin, is AI Jia still in contact with him?" Chin Mo was about to leave, but he turned to look at her. His expression was extremely dark. He glared at her. "What are you talking about? There's nothing going on between me and AI Jia." Secretary He didn't think much of it. If there wasn't anything going on, why did he have to hold back? Of course, Chin Mo could see the mockery in Secretary He's eyes. He said coldly, "If you keep looking at me like that, you don't have to come to work tomorrow. Also, don't talk too much in front of He Huan." Chin Mo turned to leave as he said that. Really, were the secretaries nowadays so worrisome? They were so gossipy. Some things even needed the boss to remind them. Secretary He stomped his foot behind him. You're obviously trying to hide something. Who would believe you if you said there was nothing going on?" Chin Mo went straight to the parking lot. After locating the car, he drove straight to the restaurant. At the moment, He Huan and Shinting were enjoying their meal in the restaurant, completely unaffected by Weibo. Anyway, it didn't change anything. She would be a moron if she said that Shinting was someone that her little puppy trusted. After He Huan finished the aperitif, Shinting expressed his opinion. "I'm not 18 yet, so I don't have a driver's license." In fact, He Huan didn't have to answer because Chin Mo would be here soon. However, she still asked Shinting, "Do you know how to drive?" Shinting said conservatively, "I can't go on the road." Because he wasn't 18 years old yet. As He Huan ate her steak, she said casually, "What's the point of being so outstanding? Really, these kids are so annoying. Can't they give the adults a way out?" Shinting laughed and said in a low voice, "I know it naturally. I didn't go out of my way to learn. It's actually very simple, he rambled on, and Juan couldn't take it anymore. Enchanting, this brat, couldn't understand the pain of someone who had failed several subjects. Back then, she couldn't drive even after getting her driver's license. Chinamo sat beside her for 2 years before she finally got her driver's license. Director, he felt that he was being looked down upon again. Chapter 4607. Chinamo glanced at her again before instructing, write up a report about AIGA's crew stealing the box office. Make it the top trending topic. We must have evidence. He wouldn't suppress her private affairs either. That would be too deliberate and would lower his status. AIGA had tried her best to defame Juan for the sake of the box office. He had taken drastic measures to make it impossible for her to continue. Honestly speaking, Chinamo had lost his patience with AIGA. He even wanted her to disappear forever. He had the ability to do so, but he had always tolerated her. But AIGA wasn't satisfied and couldn't see the situation clearly. Chinmo's expression didn't look too good. Secretary, he was a little shocked. She had never seen President Chin look like this. She couldn't help but remind him, President Chin. Chinamo snapped out of his trance and said in a low voice, just do as I say. We'll talk about the rest later. Secretary, he was stunned. There was something else. It seemed like AIGA had offended President Chin. At one time, King Entertainment had thought that AIGA was President Chin's mistress, but President Chin was deeply in love with Director He. But now, Secretary, he wasn't so sure about the intensity of his hatred. Secretary, he hesitated again and again. This veteran couldn't help but ask, President Chin, is AIGA still in contact with him? Chinamo was about to leave, but now he turned to look at her. His expression was dark as he glared at her. What are you talking about? There's nothing going on between me and AIGA. Secretary, he didn't think much of it. If there wasn't anything going on, why did he have to hold back? Of course, Chinamo could see the mockery in Secretary He's eyes. He said coldly, don't come to work tomorrow if you keep looking at me like that. Also, don't talk too much in front of Juan. Chinamo turned to leave as he said that. Really, were all secretaries these days so worrisome? They were so gossipy. Some things even needed the boss to remind them. Secretary, he stomped his foot behind him. You're obviously trying to hide something. Who would believe you if you said there was nothing going on? Chinamo went straight to the parking lot. After locating the car, he drove straight to the restaurant. At the moment, Juan and Enchanting were enjoying their meal in the restaurant, completely unaffected by Weibo. Anyway, it didn't change anything. She would be a moron if she said that Enchanting was someone that her little puppy trusted. After Juan finished the aperitif, Enchanting expressed his opinion. I'm not 18 yet, so I don't have a driver's license. In fact, Juan didn't have to answer because Chinamo would be here soon. However, she still asked Enchanting, do you know how to drive? Enchanting said conservatively, I can't go on the road. Because he wasn't 18 years old yet. As Juan ate her steak, she said casually, what's the point of being so outstanding? Really, these kids are so annoying. Can't they give the adults a way out? Enchanting chuckled and lowered his voice. I learned it naturally. I didn't go out of my way to learn it. It's actually very simple. After that, Juan couldn't take it anymore. Enchanting, this brat, couldn't understand the pain of someone who had failed several subjects. Back then, she couldn't drive even after getting her driver's license. Chinamo sat beside her for 2 years before she finally got her driver's license. Chapter 4608. Qin Mo nodded in understanding, his voice carrying a hint of laughter. Yes, yes, yes. You're right. Huan stared at him, her eyes gleaming. There was something that only a husband and wife could understand. Qin Mo's eyes darkened. He glanced at her quietly, his meaning unclear. He sat down next to Huan. Enchanting helped him order food. After all, they had lived together for a few days. Enchanting was a meticulous person, so he had a good grasp of Qin Mo's appetite. Qin Mo was very satisfied with this. He felt that this little guy was very considerate and would be a good husband in the future. While they were waiting for the food, Aijia's voice was cold. Impossible. It's impossible. My crew didn't steal the box office at all. When she spoke, her lips were pale and she couldn't stop trembling. It was obvious that she was really panicking. After a while, she stared at Qin Mo and Huan and narrowed her eyes. Did you do it, Qin Mo, or did you do it, Huan? No one paid attention to her. Aijia was furious. She bit her lip and looked around. There were already many people looking at them. She had already lost her composure. She couldn't embarrass herself anymore. She knew that she had fallen into someone else's trap, but there was nothing she could do. She could only take the blame. The box office was Qin Mo's doing. His move was really too sinister. Aijia didn't have time to stay here. She couldn't afford to lose face here. There were many things waiting for her to deal with. When she turned to leave, Qin Mo's voice came from behind her. It was so cold that it was like ice. If I were you, I wouldn't use the same method twice. Miss AI, you should know that my tolerance is not very good. You should know when to stop. Aijia stood there, her body a little stiff. After a long time, she walked out in a straight line. She was always proud. After Aijia left, Qin Mo acted as if nothing had happened. Coincidentally, the food arrived and they had finished eating. He was eating alone. Huan gently sipped her apéritif. Qin Mo only frowned when he saw this, but he didn't say anything. However, Huan interrogated him while tasting the apéritif. Did you tamper with the box office? Qin Mo ate the food gracefully before answering her. Do you think I'm that kind of person? Huan answered directly. Qin Mo smiled. Do you think this isn't good? Huan's voice was a little weak. Not bad. Qin Mo smiled again. That's good. It means that we share the same view. Enchanting couldn't help but cough. Qin Mo had really refreshed his worldview. Qin Mo looked at him again. Enchanting, do you think it's not good? Of course, to cultivate shamelessness, one had to start from a child. It was just that he didn't know if Enchanting could do it now. Enchanting immediately said, it's only right to use the necessary means. Qin Mo nodded with satisfaction and continued to eat the rest of the steak. Huan and Enchanting looked at each other and understood each other. Qin Mo kept his head down. At this time, he wiped his lips and said in a very calm voice, why did you make eye contact when I didn't know? Huan played dumb. Did I? She looked at Enchanting again. Enchanting, do you think so? Enchanting shook his head. I don't think so. Huan was very satisfied. She said to Qin Mo, no. Qin Mo smiled and pinched her face. You've learned to be bad after drinking a little. I'll teach you a lesson when we get back. As he spoke, he dragged her up and helped her put on her coat. Chapter 4609. Huan bit her lip and looked at him. It was like a girl's dream. Enchanting, who was at the side, felt uneasy again. He had had enough of the public display of affection every day. When they got back, they sat in Chen Mo's car. Huan sat beside him and chatted about the movie. She was still not sure if she had really squeezed out the commercial movies, and she seemed to be very relaxed about it. Chen Mo said calmly as he drove, "It's long past the era of finding a famous director and a few A-list actors to produce a blockbuster. Now, we have to rely on word of mouth." He looked ahead intently and then teased Huan, "Director, he has been discovering overseas that you don't have a good understanding of the domestic movie market. It's 2019, and the domestic audience's taste is no longer what it used to be. The era of young male idols is over, and the audience needs something with depth. Twin fits the bill. I can only say that this era needs it, and of course, we will need more content in the future. Only with good content will there be a market." Huan glanced at him. "You seem to be making me out to be a layman. President Chen, don't forget that my previous movies were not only released overseas, but also in China." Chen Mo laughed. "Yeah, Director He, I want to ask you about the box office. It's elixir overseas, but it's poison in China, right?" He was so merciless that Huan was about to explode and stare at him. Chen Mo laughed again, very happily. "Why, you're not convinced? You've filmed 6 movies, but they don't even add up to 1 billion yuan domestically. Actually, I'm embarrassed. If I go out, people will say, 'President Chen, isn't it a waste to arrange so many screenings for Director He?' King Entertainment had many cinema chains. Every time Huan's movie was released, Chen Mo would arrange many screenings for her like a bootlicker. However, Huan's movie was really not acclimatized in China. Actually, he wasn't trying to discourage her. If he hadn't edited it this time and used the original version, she would probably have lost to AI Jia. Even if AI Jia's film was a typical commercial failure, Huan still couldn't beat it. However, Chen Mo was a very smart man. Of course, he wouldn't say these words to his little darling. After he said that, Huan reached out and punched him a few times. Chen Mo smiled and continued driving. Half an hour later, the car stopped in front of the villa. As soon as she got out of the car, a little person rushed over and hugged her. "Mom." Huan was a little surprised, but she still happily hugged the little fellow. Huan was especially coquettish in her arms, rubbing her little face. Huan squatted down. "Why are you back so soon?" "I miss Mommy," Huan said sweetly. Huan nodded and kissed her. "Mommy missed you too." Just then, Huan saw Enchanting. She turned around and hugged his leg. "I miss Big Brother too." Enchanting didn't correct her and let her call him Big Brother. Then he gently lifted her up with both hands. Huan hugged his neck and kissed his cheek, calling him Big Brother affectionately. Enchanting smiled and carried her towards the entrance of the villa. At the entrance of the villa, a thin and slender figure stood there, looking at them calmly. Huan's little body moved. She wanted to say something but didn't. Chapter 46:10. At the entrance of the villa, a slim and slender figure stood there, looking at them indifferently. Huan's little body moved. She wanted to say something, but she didn't. Xiangnan, who was standing there, didn't say anything either. He just greeted Chen Mo and Huan, stepped into the night, and got into a black limousine. Huan, who was in Enchanting's hand, called out in a crisp voice, "Brother Xiangnan, I will miss you too." Xiangnan, dressed in black, was already sitting in the back seat of the car. He was about to close the door. When he heard her call him, his hand paused, and he looked in her direction. The driver asked softly, "Young Master Xiangnan, do you want to start the car?" Yi Xiangnan said calmly, "Wait." He leaned against the back seat again and said softly, "This little idiot." She wanted to go home, saying that she missed her mother. He had prepared for an English debate for a month, but when he sent her back, she threw herself into Shenting's arms. This was unacceptable for the arrogant Yi Xiangnan, but he couldn't do anything about it. He wanted to let go, but he couldn't bear to. So he could only torture himself like this. Just like at this moment, he quietly watched her in the arms of another person. She was too young to know what feelings were, and he couldn't get angry even if he wanted to. If he had to be angry, he could only be angry at himself. Yi Huan looked at him, wanting to cry. At this moment, Yi Huan didn't know that her behavior was bad. It was just that it wasn't obvious. Shenting put her down. He was very tolerant of her. After all, Yi Huan was still young, and Shenting wanted her to be happy. When he liked someone, he wanted her to be happy. So at this moment, Shenting put Yi Huan down. Yi Xiangnan's car door was still open. Yi Huan ran over and threw herself into Yi Xiangnan's arms. Yi Xiangnan still didn't have much of an expression on his face. Yi Huan was in his arms and his gaze met Shenting's. They were both teenagers, but one was deep and the other was indifferent. He was equally outstanding, and his future was immeasurable. At such a time, Yi Xiangnan held Yi Huan in his arms and had an urge to take her away. But if he did that, he would lose. Even if Yi Huan went back with him, Uncle Qin Mo would probably not agree. Yi Xiangnan would be eliminated. If Shenting could let go, so could he. So no matter how unwilling he was, Yi Xiangnan still put Yi Huan down. The young Yi Huan didn't know what was going on. She said happily, "I'll go see Big Brother Xiangnan in a few days." Yi Xiangnan stepped out of the black limousine and reached out to touch the little girl in the night. He said okay, but he didn't say that he probably wouldn't be able to come out after going to school. He would have to receive this kind of education for the next 3 years, and he would only be able to see her 2 or 3 times a year. And for these 3 years, Shenting would be the one accompanying her. Yi Xiangnan didn't want to let go, but his pride and self-esteem didn't allow him to. Moreover, she was only 7 years old. What did she know? Finally, he let go of her and carried her to Qin Mo, handing her over to Qin Mo. Qin Mo was also satisfied with Yi Xiangnan's actions. He couldn't help it. His daughter was too cute, so the boys who wanted to pursue her were all outstanding. He was dazzled. President Qin was also quite shameless. Chapter 46:11. Yi Xiangnan put down Yi Huan and looked at her deeply. Yi Huan moved her mouth and wanted to say something. "Silly girl." Yi Xiangnan reached out and touched her hair, then murmured, "If you want to wear a dress, then wear it." Yi Huan probably felt his emotions, so she shook her head and still looked pitiful. Yi Xiannan smiled again. Her smile was a little bitter and helpless. Uncle Qin really gave him a difficult problem. In fact, he could really ignore it or even give up, but he couldn't give up now. There was even a trace of pain in Yi Xiangnan's eyes. Qin Mo and Yi Huan could understand it, and so could Shenting. Shenting could see that Yi Xiangnan liked Yi Huan. It was not as simple as 2 innocent lovers, but the feeling of a man who liked a woman. It was the same as Shenting. Shenting's eyes fell on Yi Xiangnan's face, and then Yi Xiangnan also looked at him. The 2 boys' eyes met, and neither of them gave way. Sparks were ignited. However, Yi Xiangnan still left. He got into the black limousine and slowly disappeared into the night. Qin Mo handed Yi Huan to Shenting. Take care of her. I have something to discuss with your aunt. Enchanting nodded and carried Yi Huan upstairs. The little Yi Huan lay on his shoulder, facing the direction where Yi Xiangnan disappeared. Qin Mo smiled. I didn't know that our daughter had the potential to be a scumbag. Look at how infatuated those two boys are. Yi Huan didn't dare to flatter him. She glanced at him and said, if that's the case, then it must be your bad genes. As she spoke, she was about to go upstairs, yawning and looking very sleepy. Qin Mo followed behind her. When they reached the bedroom, he reached out to grab her and pushed her against the door. Yi Huan was pinned down by him. She struggled but failed. She glared at him. Qin Mo easily restrained her and said with a smile, you just said that you inherited my bad genes. Mrs. Qin, what bad genes do you think I have? Scum. Yi Huan knew he was up to no good, so she bit her lip and refused to speak. Because what he said next wasn't anything good. Qin Mo looked at her and chuckled. You seem to have learned something. Yi Huan continued to ignore him. Qin Mo chuckled. Why aren't you saying anything? Are you feeling guilty? Yi Huan didn't say a word. Qin Mo used one hand to pinch her chin and chuckled. Then let me say it. Let's see if I'm right. Our little Mrs. Qin is the scumbag. She likes this and that, right? Yi Huan bit her lip. I didn't. No. You didn't like Rongyu, huh? President Qin interrogated. Yi Huan bit her lip and couldn't say anything for a long time. Because it was the truth. She was silent. Qin Mo chuckled. Why don't you say anything? Didn't you say that you're not a scumbag? Yi Huan stared at him and patted his hand. I want to sleep. You're just avoiding the question. Qin Mo smiled gently. He knew that she was really tired. He felt that he was like a Buddha now. He was only 40 years old, in the prime of his life, and his wife was at home. What made him so Buddha? What kind of brilliance was this? But he always spoiled her. When she said that she was tired and wanted to sleep, he personally helped her bathe and sleep. Before sleeping, Yi Huan put her head on his shoulder. Qin Mo lowered his head and asked her gently, how does it feel to be a princess, Mrs. Qin? Chapter 46:12. Before falling asleep, Yi Huan put her head on his shoulder. Qin Mo lowered his head and asked her gently, how does it feel to be a princess, Mrs. Qin? Yi Huan smiled gently. It's okay. Qin Mo smiled and stroked her hair. Go to sleep. There's an event tomorrow. Yi Huan closed her eyes and nodded. There would be a fan meeting at the biggest cinema in B City tomorrow. The main members of the crew would meet the fans. It was a small event. It would not take long, only about half an hour, but she had to be energetic. In fact, a movie had to go to a lot of cinemas. But because of her poor health, Qin Mo took it all. The only scene in B City could be considered as repaying the fans. Yi Huan wanted to sleep, but she was reluctant to do so. She leaned on Qin Mo's shoulder and snorted. Qin Mo, I think I have good taste. He leaned against the headboard and smiled gently. Is it me or Rongyu? Yi Huan didn't want to answer. A spoiled girl was willful. She closed her eyes and leaned against him. I want to sleep. Qin Mo was quite tolerant. He smiled and lay flat on his back. He reached out and rubbed her fluffy hair. Go to sleep, little girl. Asterisk on the other side, Enchanting did not go to Yi Huan's bedroom with little Yi Huan in his arms. Instead, he went back to his own room and put the little girl on the chair. He had a lot to say to her, but he was afraid that she would not understand. After all, she was still so young. Enchanting squatted in front of her and touched her little head. His voice was a little hoarse. "Why did you come back so suddenly? Didn't you say that you would stay for a week?" Little Huan looked at him pitifully and whispered, "The food is not delicious." Enchanting was a little surprised. There should be several chefs in the Yi family. Why couldn't they make food that suited her appetite? Huan nodded hard. "It's not delicious. I want to eat sausage fried rice. I especially want to eat it. They don't make it for me after work." Enchanting was amused and annoyed at the same time. He stared at her. When Huan said this, she probably felt a little wronged. Her big eyes were full of tears. Enchanting's heart immediately softened. "If they don't know how to do it, you can ask your brother Xiangnan to do it." "Brother Xiangnan won't. He will only make a bowl of noodles for me," Huan accused in a crisp voice. Enchanting actually wanted to say that he should make a bowl of noodles, but at this moment, he forcefully swallowed it. Huan finished complaining and looked at Enchanting. "Brother, do you know how to do it?" Of course, Enchanting wouldn't. But now, if he said no, that little thing should be very disappointed. For example, when he looked at her now, he felt that every strand of her hair was filled with dejection. Enchanting's voice was very gentle. "Do you really want to eat it?" Huan nodded vigorously. "I want to eat it." They wanted to eat until they went home, but Papa accompanied Mama and didn't expect to cook the baby's favorite food. As the little girl spoke, her big eyes were full of tears again. Enchanting couldn't help laughing. He reached out and pinched her face. "I'll cook it for you, okay?" When he said that, his tone was incredibly gentle. Huan looked at him suspiciously and said in a crisp voice, "Brother, do you know how to cook it?" "Do I know how to cook it?" Could it be that he knew how to look at her? Enchanting cleared his throat. "I'll be able to do it soon." Little Huan was still suspicious, so Enchanting simply carried the little greedy cat downstairs. Chapter 46:13. Updated quickly. At this time, it was already late, about 10 o'clock at night. It was long past the time for a baby to sleep, but for a delicious fried rice, Huan was obviously working hard. Enchanting carried her into the kitchen. It was a little cold in the kitchen, so he turned on the heater. Huan sat on the counter obediently, looking at Enchanting eagerly. Enchanting smiled faintly, turned to get a laptop, and began to search for sausage fried rice. "Brother, so you don't know how to?" Huan pouted unhappily and stared at him. Enchanting's gaze fell on the screen, and he smiled faintly. "Stop it. I'm thinking, it should be delicious if you make 2 servings. Huan looked a little doubtful. "Really?" Enchanting looked at it carefully and silently remembered it in his heart. Then, he looked at her and smiled faintly. Huan was about to faint from the electric shock. Brother is really good-looking, even more so than Brother Xiangnan under the light. Brother Xiangnan is good-looking, but sometimes he can be fierce, but Brother Enchanting is very gentle, so Huan is not afraid of him at all. At this moment, Huan didn't expect that as they grew older, Xiannan and Enchanting were completely opposite. Xiannan was the gentleman that all women liked, while Enchanting's face was always as cold as a mountain. It was very difficult for him to even smile. But now, he was still a gentle young man who fried rice for Huan, and his eyes were also filled with love. Huan got impatient after sitting down, so she jumped down and walked around him. Enchanting studied the recipe and smiled. "Don't mess around. With the little fellow accompanying him, he finally cooked a plate of fried rice, but Shinting only tasted it before throwing it away. It tasted terrible. Yi Huan raised her head. I didn't even eat it. It will taste better later, Shinting said, and then began to cook again. Yi Huan wanted to see it, but she couldn't. She was so anxious that she wanted him to carry her. Shinting had no choice but to carry her back to the counter with one hand and look at her for a long time. His gaze made little Yi Huan's heart stop beating for a moment. She stared at him for a long time. Finally, Yi Huan said, I didn't even taste it. Shinting looked at her and smiled. Be patient. Yi Huan rubbed her hands together excitedly and expectantly. Big brother, can you really handle it? Shinting looked at her and found it a little funny. After a while, he continued to fry the second plate. He was already much more familiar with it. Because his family had high expectations of him, Shinting rarely cooked. Therefore, he didn't know how to cook ordinary fried rice. At this moment, the frying pan was slowly emitting a fragrant aroma. It was a very, very fragrant aroma. Yi Huan licked her lower lip and exclaimed, Big brother, it looks so delicious. Shinting chuckled. Yeah, it should be very delicious. When the fried rice was done, he scooped it up and tasted it himself. It's a little better. This time, he fed Yi Huan 2 mouthfuls. Yi Huan's mouth moved as she ate. It's too delicious, too delicious. Shinting gazed at her. It's delicious just like that. Yi Huan looked at him with her big, cute eyes. If this isn't delicious, what else is delicious? Shinting smiled and pinched her soft little face. Do it again. With that said, he snatched the plate of fried rice from Yi Huan's mouth and threw it into the trash can. Into the trash can. Right in front of Yi Huan, he threw it into the trash can. Chapter 46:14. Yi Huan was still eating half a mouthful of fried rice. When she saw Shinting pour the fried rice away, her little mouth opened wide and she didn't make a sound for a long time. Then, tears burst out of her eyes. Bad brother. The little girl was extremely hungry. The spicy food just now was so delicious, so she was even angrier. She decided to shamelessly hug his leg from behind and beg him to pay for her meal. Her behavior was actually a little annoying for a child. After all, she was only 7 years old. However, Shinting felt an indescribable feeling. It was a little sweet. He wondered if he was a pervert to actually pamper her like this. She cried and he coaxed her. His voice was really gentle. All right, stop crying. There will be more delicious food in 5 minutes. Actually, it wasn't that she couldn't eat it just now. It was just that Shinting liked to brag and ask for favors. He had to do everything to the best of his ability. He neglected the fact that the little girl was extremely hungry and she was only 7 years old. He seemed to be a little too demanding. Shinting coaxed her for a long time before Yi Huan licked her little mouth with tears in her eyes. She said weakly, Then you must make it better so that I will forgive you. Shinting laughed and let her hug him as he continued to cook the fried rice. This time, even the sausages looked much better. After a while, a fragrant smell spread out. Yi Huan pressed against his leg and her voice was especially muffled. Brother Shinting, hurry up. I'm starving to death. However, she also smelled that the fragrance was stronger than before. It smelled so good. It smelled so delicious. Yi Huan was very satisfied and had the patience to wait for a while more. Shinting spent 5 minutes cooking the fried rice and put it on a plate. Because there was a little more, he divided it into 2 plates. He didn't go to the dining room. Instead, he sat at a small dining table in the kitchen. He carried Yi Huan up and even tied a snow-white scarf for her. Yi Huan was very satisfied and even smelled it in a very ceremonial manner. "It smells so good." As she spoke, she grinned at Enchanting. "I like you the most, big brother." Enchanting smiled. "Aren't you hungry? Hurry up and eat." As he spoke, Yi Huan's big eyes peeked at his bowl. She asked slowly, "Brother, are you hungry too?" Children's thoughts were usually very easy to guess. How could Enchanting not know? He smiled. "I'm not hungry." Yi Huan lowered her head and took a few bites. Then, she looked at Enchanting with a worried expression. Her expression was a little funny. Enchanting chuckled and reached out to pull her hair. "There's still a lot. I don't think your belly can hold it." Yi Huan raised her head and looked at him in disbelief. Enchanting was still smiling. He reached out and rubbed it a few more times, looking like he was doting on it. It was probably because it was too delicious. After eating 1 plate, Yi Huan still wanted more. She licked her lips and looked at Enchanting. Enchanting smiled and pushed another plate to her. "Eat it. But be careful. Don't overeat." So, Yi Huan buried herself in eating again. But no matter how delicious it was, she still couldn't eat any more after eating half a plate. But the rest was really a pity. Yi Huan tried to take 2 more bites, but she still couldn't eat any more. Her belly was round and fell on the small dining room floor. She was so full that she couldn't even walk. Enchanting was amused. He glanced at her and said, "Not eating anymore." Chapter 46:15. Enchanting was amused. He glanced at her. "You're not eating anymore." Yi Huan stared at the plate of fried rice. "Can I keep it for tomorrow?" Enchanting rejected it. "It's not hygienic." As he spoke, he moved the plate of fried rice over and ate quietly. Yi Huan squealed. "I knew you wanted to eat it, brother." Enchanting looked at her and smiled. "I'll fry it for you tomorrow." "Oh," Yi Huan replied with a look of disbelief. Enchanting smiled and washed the 2 plates. The back view of him washing the plates was also very nice. Little Yi Huan, who had eaten and drunk to her heart's content, propped up her cute little chin with her hands. She looked at Big Brother Enchanting's back and thought to herself, "Daddy is the best, bringing Big Brother Enchanting home." Brother Enchanting knew everything. He was like a little fairy. When Yi Huan called Enchanting that, Enchanting's face darkened. After a while, he said expressionlessly, "I'm a man. There are male fairies too." Yi Huan gestured. "Harry Potter is. He knows all kinds of magic. Isn't he a fairy?" Brother Enchanting knows a lot too, so he's also a fairy. Enchanting wanted to shit. He stared at her for a long time and finally gave up arguing with her. He picked up the little thing and walked upstairs. Yi Huan didn't feel uncomfortable in his hand. Instead, she raised her head happily. "Brother, do you want to sleep?" Enchanting lowered his head and said in a low voice, "I want to read for a while." The little fellow responded with an "oh," then somehow crawled along his body, hugged his neck, and buried her little face in his neck confidently. It was as if Enchanting was her private property. Enchanting lowered his head. His gaze was beyond his age. He looked at her quietly for a long time and whispered, "Why are you suddenly acting coquettishly?" Yi Huan hugged him. "I won't sleep either. I'll accompany you to read." Enchanting carried her to her bedroom and placed her on the beautiful pink bed. He squatted down and coaxed her, "Good girl, sleep early." Yi-Huan refused. She didn't want it. Shinting couldn't do anything to her. In the end, he still carried her to his room. She was small, so small that she didn't know it was unreasonable. She had Yi Xiangnan in her heart, but she was very attached to him. How he wished that she didn't know anything, but Shinting sadly knew that her love for Yi Xiangnan was actually love between a man and a woman. However, he was still unwilling to give up and gamble on an unknown future. She was really too young to stay up late. He helped her wipe her little hands and face and put her under his blanket. He even thoughtfully went to find a small hot water bag and put it in her arms. Yi-Huan felt really happy like this. She closed her eyes. "I'm asleep." Shinting smiled lightly and looked at the cute little guy with a gentle gaze. She said that she was asleep. After a while, she closed her eyes as if she was really asleep. Shinting called her gently twice, but she didn't respond. It seemed that she was really asleep. It was late at night, but his heart was still boiling. He couldn't forget the moment they got out of the car and the little guy threw herself at them. The surprise came so quickly. She actually came back. For a bowl of fried rice. He didn't know why Yi Xiangnan didn't find a way to keep her. He could also see that the proud Yi Xiangnan wanted to keep her for a few more days. The noble boy hid a touch of gentleness that only belonged to Yi-Huan. Chapter 46:16. Shinting's heart was filled with an indescribable feeling. It was a little sour, a little sad, and a little guilty. It was as if this moment was stolen. This little happiness was supposed to be Yi Xiangnan's. But there was a voice in his heart that said, no, not necessarily. Maybe when she grows up, she doesn't want Yi Xiangnan, but me, Shinting. When Shinting felt that he couldn't bear it anymore, he reached out and gently touched her little face. But he immediately withdrew his hand. His face was slightly hot, as if he had done something unspeakable. Suddenly, Shinting stood up and walked to the window. He wanted to open the window, but in the end, he didn't because he was afraid that she would catch a cold. Just like that, he quietly looked out of the window for a long time before he calmed down. But when he picked up the book, his heart still wasn't calm. The words that he read turned into Yi-Huan's face. In the end, Shinting decided to sleep. He went to take a shower, and when he turned back, he felt that it was troublesome. Yi-Huan slept in his bed, so of course he couldn't sleep with her. He sighed, took a blanket, and then lay down on the sofa and covered himself. The night deepened. He smelled the sweet smell in the air. It was Yi-Huan's sweet smell. Shinting thought that he wouldn't be able to sleep, but when he lay down, he quickly fell asleep and slept better than ever. That night, Shinting had a dream. In the dream, there was Yi-Huan. When he woke up, the sky was already bright. He suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Yi-Huan's little face. She was still asleep, sleeping soundly on his bed. Her porcelain white face was buried in the pillow, and the ends of her short hair were exposed. She looked as cute as an angel, and she suddenly fell into Shinting's arms. He even reached out and touched his heart, as if he wanted to confirm if there was anything there. Of course, there was nothing there, only a beating heart. Shinting held his heart for a long time, and then looked at the little fellow. She was still sleeping soundly. There was no sign of him waking up. Shinting closed his eyes slightly. When he opened them again, there was something else in his eyes. He reached out his hand and gently touched her face, feeling the touch. Actually, he should have given her a good morning kiss. They were family, so it wasn't too much, but he had other thoughts in his heart, so thinking about it, he felt guilty. At least not now, at least not when she was so young, at least not when she was asleep. Under the morning light, Enchanting's expression was a little repressed and restrained. However, her beauty was worth him restraining himself for many years. It was not until the year she turned 18 that she did something big. Enchanting just stared at her, not realizing that he had been kneeling there for a long time. His knees were hurting. Yi-Huan woke up at 8 in the morning. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw Brother Shin's enlarged face. He was really good-looking. Yi-Huan was only 7 years old, so how would she know what it meant to be reserved? She just stared straight at him, and from time to time, she would exclaim, "Brother, you're really good-looking." Enchanting gazed at those big eyes that were like those of a blue cat, and smiled. "You're good-looking too." Yi-Huan found herself sleeping in his bed in his bedroom. She was a little surprised at first, but probably because the bed was too comfortable, she didn't want to move at all. Chapter 46:17. Yi-Huan realized that she was sleeping under his blanket in his bedroom. At first, she was a little surprised, but perhaps because the blanket was too comfortable, she didn't want to move at all. Not only did she not want to leave, she even buried her chubby little body in it like a little worm. That made Enchanting laugh. He lowered his head slightly and said, "Still want to sleep?" His voice was hoarse, which was unique to boys during puberty, but it was very pleasant to listen to. Yi-Huan yawned and said, "I'm not sleepy anymore, but the blanket is so warm. Also, brother, why does the blanket smell so good?" "It smells like the sun." Enchanting laughed and said, "What smell of the sun?" Yi-Huan blinked her big eyes and blinked. "It's the smell of the little sun. It smells so good." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. That expression was indescribably happy. And that kind of happy expression was very infectious. At least at this moment, Enchanting's heart was also very happy. And this kind of moment was extremely rare for him. He lowered his head and looked at the little person. She was so short that she was only 1/3 the length of the bed. She was so small that she looked like a small bag on the big bed. But such a small body had a lot of energy that made him happy. Enchanting's hand was half hugging her little head. This overly intimate posture probably made Yi-Huan feel uneasy. But then she remembered that this was her brother Enchanting, so she didn't move away. Instead, she placed her little head on his arm and looked at him adorably. "Yi-Huan, you're the little sun," Enchanting said in a low voice. Qin Yi-Huan was Enchanting's little son. When he first saw her and saw the stars in her eyes, he felt that he had found the person he had always wanted to find. But in the end, she was still too small to understand and didn't hear him clearly. "Brother, what are you saying?" Enchanting smiled faintly. There was an indescribable feeling in his heart. Yes, she was too small. He reached out and gently touched her little head. He smiled and said, "I'll get up after a while." He thought for a moment, then got up and opened the white curtains. Instantly, the bedroom was filled with the blazing sun. However, none of them were as dazzling as the little thing on the bed. Enchanting needed to calm himself down. He stood by the window and leaned against it, looking outside. Torture, he thought. However, he was willing to be tortured. At 8:30 a.m., both Qin Mo and Yi-Huan got up because Yi-Huan had an activity to attend. After tidying up, he went to check on Yi-Huan, but she wasn't there. When he returned to Enchanting's room, he saw that Yi-Huan had occupied Enchanting's bed and was rolling around happily. Yi-Huan felt that it was inappropriate and wanted to say something, but Qin Mo patted her hand and said, "Enchanting knows his limits." Then, He-Huan found the small blanket on the sofa and Shinting's clothes were still the same as yesterday. They were a little wrinkled, so she understood. She let out a soft hum and said nothing more. Qin Mo pulled her downstairs so that they wouldn't disturb the two children. The two of them ate quietly. He-Huan couldn't help but say, Qin Mo, I always feel that the two children seem to be a little too close. What do you think? President Qin brushed her jam and bread. After handing it to her, he smiled and said, I thought you would be happy. After all, between the two boys, I thought you liked Shinting more. Chapter 46:18. President Qin brushed her jam bread and passed it to her before smiling. I thought you'd be happy with this. After all, I thought you'd like Shinting more between the two of you. After he finished speaking, he picked up the black coffee and took a sip. He-Huan frowned. But I'm Yi-Huan's mother. She's still so young. Qin Mo was still holding his coffee cup. He looked up at her with a hint of a smile in his eyes. After a while, he smiled. Then you're being picky. You want Yi-Huan to get the best care, but you're also afraid that she'll be taken advantage of. Think about it, what can she suffer in Shinting's hands? Shinting is a very warm boy. He won't hurt Yi-Huan. At least before she grows up, he'll know what to do. Yi-Huan asked, what about after she grows up? I don't know. Qin Mo smiled. But in the future, even if Yi-Huan suffers, it'll be Yi Xiangnan. As he spoke, the expression on his face changed slightly. He lowered his voice. As for Shinting, he'll probably suffer because of her. These three kids are destined to be entangled. Actually, it might not be three. There might even be Baianin. In Qin Mo's eyes, Baianin and Shinting were actually very similar, shockingly similar. From a romantic perspective, they weren't suitable. Yi-Huan was suitable for Shinting, but Shinting might not be suitable for Yi-Huan. Xiangnan was suitable for Yi-Huan. But with the addition of Shinting, everything would change. After Qin Mo finished speaking, Yi-Huan frowned. You make it sound so complicated. Qin Mo stretched out his hand. Don't think about it, Mrs. Qin. This is something you should worry about 10 years ago. Now, you just need to think about your life with Mr. Qin. That's the important thing. Yi-Huan purposely wanted to disgust him. She nodded and said, yeah. You're already 40, after all. You won't last long. Is that so? Qin Mo raised his eyebrows with a faint smile in his eyes. Under that kind of gaze, it was hard for Yi-Huan not to blush. Breakfast was finally finished with difficulty. Qin Mo brought Yi-Huan her coat and helped her put it on. Yi-Huan raised her head and looked upstairs. Should we go see Yi-Huan again? In Qin Lemo's eyes, she looked worried. What are you worried about? Shinting is taking care of her. Yi-Huan looked at him eagerly. Qin Mo smiled again. You're only 7 years old. What are you worried about? You can worry about it in 10 years. Yi-Huan bit her lower lip and left with Qin Mo in the end. In the car, she made a few calls to the crew before hanging up. Qin Mo chatted with her as he drove. Have you read the comments? Even the first female lead in Twin doesn't have as high a rating as AI Meng Meng. Yi-Huan held her chin and sighed softly. Yeah, I've read it too. It's a pity that she doesn't act in movies. Qin Mo's voice was calm, and Yi-Huan couldn't tell what he meant. However, she still remembered what happened in the past and said unhappily, if you hadn't given her a shortcut back then, I think she might still be filming a movie today. Is it my fault again? Qin Mo smiled. His voice was low and pleasant. Huan couldn't help but glance at him. Qin Mo smiled again. Aren't there many handsome men in the entertainment industry? Haven't you seen enough? Chapter 46:19. Huan was furious. Let's see who's uglier. Qin Mo was driving, but he held her hand and chuckled. You're actually willing to compare me with someone else? Huan bit her lip and glanced at him. She tried to pull her hand away but couldn't. Qin Mo held her hand for a while and let her go at the next intersection. Huan sat up straighter, her face burning. Qin Mo continued driving and suddenly laughed. Mrs. Qin, we've been married for so long, how can you still blush? Huan didn't want to listen to him anymore. He was so shameless. Luckily, they arrived at the theater soon. Qin Mo parked the car in the underground parking lot and unbuckled his seatbelt. I'll go with you. Huan turned her body. I'll be fine by myself. If you go, people will take photos of you and you'll be on the hot search list again. Qin Mo laughed. What's wrong with calling you beautiful? Mrs. Qin, it's hard to please you. Huan snorted. Really? Qin Mo got out of the car and opened the door for her. He bent down and said, I'll come down after I send you and the crew. Come find me after the event. We'll take the kids out for a day. Ting is starting school tomorrow. Huan doesn't matter. She's just a little older than me. Qin Mo dragged Huan out of the car and adjusted her clothes. Don't take off your coat for half an hour. Huan was speechless. Qin Mo, you can be a nanny now. Fine. Even Huan doesn't have this kind of treatment. You should be satisfied, Mrs. Qin. Qin Mo pinched her chin. Huan snorted. Qin Mo just smiled and sent her to the cinema on the 4th floor. He watched her meet up with the crew before leaving with a peace of mind. Originally, Qin Mo wanted to wait in the underground parking lot and smoke a few cigarettes. Recently, he had been so busy that he didn't have time to smoke a few. However, Qin Mo gave up and chose to wait in the resting area outside. In any case, it was only half an hour. What Qin Mo didn't expect was that something would happen within half an hour. When Huan and the main cast were being interviewed together, a fan suddenly rushed up the stage. The security guards tried to stop the fan, but they failed. They thought it was just a fanatical fan, and at most, they would just force a hug or something. They didn't expect the fan to rush up and pounce on Huan. When Huan landed on the smooth marble floor, she felt the hood of her coat cushion her head. Even so, she still felt a sharp pain. Darkness followed, and a dull pain gathered in her head. Then, it became blurry. She wanted to stay awake. She remembered that she wanted to say that she was fine. She remembered that Qin Mo was still waiting for her outside. But after a while, she felt a little lost. Qin Mo. Her last consciousness was filled with chaotic noises and a strong arm carrying her, calling for Huan. Huan. Qin Mo and Huan were the last two names in Huan's mind. She fainted and fell into Qin Mo's arms. Qin Mo sent her to the hospital as fast as he could and found Qin Chen. Qin Chen was the best surgeon in the world. After a series of scans, Qin Chen said to Qin Mo, "There's no big problem. There's just a small blood clot at the back of her head. It won't affect her daily life, but it's pressing on her nerves, and this central nervous system affects her memory." She didn't finish her sentence. Instead, she looked straight at Qin Mo so that he could prepare himself. "You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.